When it comes to shonen anime, the theme of friendship is something very prominent. It's something that's found in almost every series you watch. The themes of companionship, family, and love are things that lots of people relate to and find easy to understand. But I'd argue that One Piece does friendship very differently. In most anime that we watch, we know that certain characters are friends and close associates not because we can see that ourselves, but because we're told they are. This is an issue not only with anime, but fiction in general. Take a moment to consider, how many times have you watched a series where one character claims that someone is their best friend, but you find yourself wondering why? Why is that person your best friend? Of course, there are moments when this friendship is highlighted, speeches that the characters make that make us feel for them, or a backstory between the two that helps us understand their dynamic. But being best friends requires more than that. It's not a one-time thing. It's constant, ever-evolving, and feels like a part of someone that they cannot replace. It's not only thanks to the benefit of spending a lot of time with someone or being grateful that they once saved your life. It's about appreciating their existence and the impact that they've had over your life. Mutual empathy is one thing, but being the dearest of friends is a completely different matter. What One Piece does so well is that it doesn't only tell us that the Straw Hats are best friends, it shows us that they are. Granted, One Piece is a very, very long series, and of course, one of the advantages of having such a long runtime is the fact that we could get to spend more time with these characters. Sure, the plots are more complicated, and yes, these 23 years did give us almost 900 named characters, which is astonishing for a piece of fiction. But it's also 23 years that the characters got to spend with each other, a time that we got to watch them do so. The way that the Straw Hats interact, the way that they speak to each other, and the way they joke around, and the way they fight, and the way they fight for each other is something that I've never seen in any other piece of work. The more you watch this series and the more invested you get, you realize that you've grown with these characters. You're shown how they love each other and how they function like a family, and you love them for it. They banter almost constantly, they make fun of each other, sometimes straight up bullying. They support each other, and it always feels so genuine. There is a reason why the One Piece community values these moments the most. Now that the arcs got so massive that we've got almost 100 named characters involved and 7 different POVs at all times, lots of people miss the time that we got to spend with the Straw Hats together, because now, seeing all the Straw Hats in one panel is a grand event. But regardless of the things that we don't see now, there are things that we have actually seen already. We've seen what they do when they party together, and how much fun they have. We've seen what they do when they're in a very crucial situation and one of them messes up. We've seen them get angry at each other or be in high spirits. We've seen them sad and depressed. We've seen them panicked and scared. And when things get tense, we've seen them lose their grip and make decisions that, even though at the time seemed the best for the crew, at the end it assured their mutual destruction. We've seen how they feel and think when they're separated from each other, and how much that loyalty never dwindles. We've seen them fight together, but we've also seen them fight each other. We've seen them try to sever this friendship, and we've seen them regret it instantly. And sometimes, which is the case for me, I've seen them do nothing and still felt so entertained. One of my favorite scenes in One Piece ever is actually from a filler episode. It's a very, very simple scene of the Straw Hats sitting down in the kitchen on a rainy day. Sanji is washing the dishes, Chopper is steering the ship, Robin is reading a book, Nami a newspaper, and Usopp is working in his Usopp workshop. Luffy has nothing to do and he's extremely bored. And the banter that happens in this scene is so simple that I don't even think there are many animations in it. Luffy complains some more and then, in sheer desperation, asks what Robin is reading, which of course is a shock to everybody. This is a very simple scene where almost nothing happens. It's just the Straw Hats spending downtime together. But it still managed to become one of my favorites because it's one of these times that you realize that they're a close group of friends who live together and they act like they do. The dynamic between each and every single Straw Hat is so entertaining and fun to watch, and there's always more left to explore. And the fact that we spent so much time with them and we still can't get enough of their relationships is what I think is the most precious about this. No one would argue that Usopp and Luffy are absolute besties or that Zoro and Robin feel very protective of Chopper. We're shown that Frankie and Brook get along surprisingly well because of their age. We're shown how Robin and Nami have a special bond because they're the only female members of the crew. We're shown that even though Zoro and Sanji fight all the time, they actually really care about each other. We've been told these things and we've been shown these things, and what makes it much better than most of the pieces of fiction that I've consumed is that it's so believable. Oda gives us a plethora of moments that most authors won't even consider including, at least not in that quantity. I've been rewatching Alabasta lately, and the amount of times that the group messes around and fight and joke around is actually astonishing. Almost half of the arc is just Straw Hat antics, and it never fails to put a smile on my face. Because watching an arc like Alabasta makes me wish that we had more of these moments in the New World. I firmly believe that one of the reasons that these relationships are so believable is the fact that they're handled in a way that's very realistic. Yes, they are a big crew and there are many of them. Currently we have 10 Straw Hats, but what makes it so concrete is that each single Straw Hat stays true to their character, and each single one of them views friendship in a very different way and acts upon it, which that's what real people do. You could be a part of a big group of friends, but that does not mean that each single one of you views friendship in the same way. It goes down to your upbringing, your personality, and your overall view of the world. Nami, for instance, views the crew as the people who saved her life and her village, a crew that offered a helping hand, and selflessly, she grew attached to them and took them on their promise of an adventure. Brook views the crew as the first people that got in contact with him after 50 years of solitude. He was starved for affection and friendship, and they came in at a time when he needed it most. It didn't matter who they were, it only mattered that they were there for him, and it's perhaps something that he'll never let go of, as we're shown that he doesn't let go of his friends no matter how much time passes. Chopper views the crew as the first group of individuals who did not shame him for being a monster, who made him feel like he could belong to something for the first time. Jinbei views the crew, and primarily Luffy, as the people whom he faced a lot of hardships with, who saved him and his island, so it made him ready to offer any help that he could. This does not mean that the group doesn't love each other equally, but they love each other differently and for different reasons, but with the same kind of intensity. The cases that I've mentioned are very unique and sometimes impossible to relate to, so I want to focus on characters that represent a common member of each friendship group: Luffy, Zoro, Robin, and Usopp. It might seem strange that I picked Luffy to represent a common person, but as common as his personality archetype is in the shonen world, it's actually very uncommon in reality. But I think Luffy is someone that you need to follow his example if you actually wish to make friends. We've all been in that point in our lives where we feel like we don't have any close friends or any friends to begin with. The reason for that is most commonly the fact that we just can't find people that we have things in common with, or people that are intellectually or artistically like-minded with us, or people that frequent the places that we go to, or people that are in the same circle as us. But you can argue that this is not a reason, it's an excuse. In a friendship group, Luffy represents the person who doesn't care about your upbringing. He doesn't care about your lifestyle or how like-minded he is with you. I'd argue that based on his personality, Luffy has little in common with any Straw Hat. All what Luffy cares about when making friends is whether he can have fun with them or not. In simpler terms, Luffy just looks for people that he can vibe with. He's someone who won't try to change you to suit his own preferences, and he respects the fact that you won't try to change him in turn. We see these kinds of people in our daily lives all the time. We've all once seen a pair of friends with seemingly nothing in common, but they're close to each other in a way that few people could relate to. Luffy's philosophy is very simple. Only once you abandon the notion of being friends with the people that are basically identical to you in every aspect, once you stop caring about what a person could be and stop trying to change them to what you think is an ideal friend, you'll start to form worthwhile bonds with people. Having less things in common with people does not correlate with how close you can be to them. You can find the most beautiful human beings by being less judgmental and opening up yourself to anyone and whoever comes in your path. And that is the kind of friend that Luffy is. When it comes to Zoro, I think a lot of people mistake his personality with that of Robin's. They mistake his aloofness and reservedness with not wanting to open up, which I completely disagree with. While Robin is the kind of friend that takes a lot of time and trust in order to form bonds with people, I think that Zoro forms bonds with people very quickly. He is just naturally the kind of friend who doesn't openly show his affection but still feels it very, very intensely. Zoro waits for people to prove themselves to him, and once that happens, he doesn't let go. He is the kind of friend who usually goes with the flow and for the most part doesn't question anything that you do, but once you mess up or when you need a wake-up call, he will be the one to call you out. He doesn't care if he comes off harsh or that he'd look like the bad guy because he looks at the bigger picture and always has everybody's best interest at heart. This is also the kind of friend that we see all the time. They're the kindest, most loyal people. Zoro doesn't need time to open up, you just need time to get used to how he expresses his friendship. Robin represents the person with the mask. She would intentionally push people away and sometimes even force them to dislike her. She's the kind of friend who seems arrogant and entitled upon first sight, but this coldness comes from a place of insecurity, of being convinced that they're not enough or that they're not worthy of that person's friendship. They're too nervous to form a bond because they know it will leave them hurt and broken. Robin is the kind of friend who's hard to crack at first and oftentimes frustrating to interact with, but once they open up, they're the most caring, kind, and affectionate friend. Now, I left Usopp for last because he's the most interesting Straw Hat to me. When Usopp was first introduced, he was my least favorite and sometimes it was unbearable to watch. But as the series went on, he cemented himself as one of my favorite One Piece characters of all time. And I think that this perfectly sums him up as a character. He's the silly, goofy friend who never quite meets everybody's expectations of him. To me, Usopp was a joke character. He was the funny one and he was the comedic relief of the crew. But then, Water 7 and Enies Lobby happened. As chaotic as Water 7 was, and rich it was with plot, Usopp's plotline is what gripped me the most. Because indeed, he was the weak clown character, he was the comedic relief, but in that arc, you realize that he knows this. He is aware of that fact. And when Usopp sat down and expressed his thoughts clearly, perhaps for the first time, about how weak he feels compared to everyone else and how he's been thinking of ways he could keep up with them. And the debate wasn't explicitly about his physical strength, as he said that he could no longer compete with anybody. Yes, Nami and Chopper weren't as strong as the rest of the crew, but at the end of the day, they were both geniuses in their own fields. Chopper is a world-class doctor, and Nami is arguably one of the best navigators in the entire Grand Line, but Usopp doesn't have that. Usopp represents the most insecure kind of friend. The friend who feels like they could never bring anything new to the table. They're not as intelligent as everybody else, they're not as funny, strong, or emotionally mature, so they hide that behind a veil of humor and goofiness. But behind that veil is a very, very insecure person who fails to realize how much he means to everyone else. He fails to realize that his friends don't love him for his talents or prowess, but they love him despite of his shortcomings. Because in a friendship, no one should keep tabs on what they could benefit from each other. Usopp represents the most important part of a friendship group, the heart. When he's not around, all his friends feel like there's something major that's missing. He is Luffy's best friend and one of the closest people to Nami. He is Chopper's role model despite him knowing that all of his stories are lies. Zoro might have been the one who insisted he apologized, but he was as relieved as everybody else when he did so. Usopp is loved and appreciated, and all that remains is for him to realize that. One Piece has an abundance of characters, but the characters that we care the most about, we care about them because others care about them. We laugh when they laugh, we cry when they cry, we care about their backstories but we don't judge them for it. Nothing I've ever consumed in my life has ever made me this invested in a bunch of characters. And in my opinion, that's the beauty of One Piece and what has made it so special for me. These friendships among the Straw Hats make me envious, but they've also pushed me to open up, bring myself down a notch, and forge meaningful friendships of my own. And for that, I'll always be grateful.